All right, now we're all done learning about rebuttals, and now we're going to move into this section on cross-examination. And this section is going to be shorter than the section on rebuttals. So today we're going to learn all about cross-examination. To start off, what is cross-examination, which is often abbreviated as CX? Cross-examination is where you get to talk directly to your opponent, and it happens after each constructive speech. So there are two constructive speeches in LD, the affirmative constructive, the negative constructive. So there's two cross-examinations in LD. So what is cross-ex? Cross-ex is when one debater asks questions to the opponent who answers the question. So more specifically, cross-examination, each one is 3 minutes long. And what happens is one person asks questions of the other, of his opponent. And the person who's answering questions is always the person who just spoke. So after the affirmative constructive, after the affirmative speaks, the negative asks questions, the affirmative answers. All right, this is the only time in the round where the judge is able to see both of you speak freely back and forth to each other. And it's the only opportunity you have to directly question your opponent during the round. And it's the only opportunity you have to answer questions well and show that your side can withstand strict scrutiny as the opponent cross-examines you and tries to expose things in your case. All right, what is the purpose of cross-examination? So there are five main goals of cross-examination, or five main purposes. And the first one is to clarify things. So if you don't understand something in your case, now's the time to clear it up. Maybe you didn't catch all of your opponent's definition. Ask them to read it again. Or a piece of information you missed in their example. Ask them what that was. Maybe you weren't listening carefully and you forgot to write down their value, which is really bad. Try not to do that. But you can ask them what their value was. That's the first one. To clarify things, you can ask clarifying questions. But usually most of the time in cross-examination, it's not so much clarification as you're trying to use cross-examination to your advantage so that you can win. The second way you can use cross-examination is to discover flaws, to find flaws in your opponent's case. You kind of probing the opponent and trying to see if there's something wrong with his arguments, to find out more from the opponent and possibly expose his case to some inconsistencies. So you might take an example that he brought up and kind of ask a lot of questions about it, try to expose something. Usually you have something in mind and you're asking questions deliberately in a manner where you're asking questions, but you already kind of know the answer, and the reason you're asking questions is to, so with a strong implication that something is wrong. And we'll see this later on as we move forward. But you ask questions of your opponent to find flaws and show those flaws to the judges. So let me think of an example here. So say your value is prosperity, right, on the side of free trade, and you have some kind of example of a policy, a free trade policy, and you start asking the opponent, so can you give me more details about this policy? And maybe the opponent doesn't have any more details. He's like, well, I don't know. And that can help you decide because it shows the opponent doesn't actually know things about his example. Or you can ask things like, so in this example, what was going on here? They can ask for some more details, and when the opponent gives the details, they can actually show that it might actually work towards your side or something along that line. Basically, you're just using cross-examination to discover flaws, and we're going to look at this later on in the video on asking questions. Anyway, though, the third point, set traps to set up your next argument. So what you can do is you can ask them certain things like, would you agree that blah, 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 blah? You can get them to agree with certain things. And secretly, these things are your points. You can get them to agree with your points before you even make your points in your speech. So you could say, do you agree that prosperity is important? Is your value is prosperity? They'll say yes. Hooray, they've already agreed that your value is important. So that can help you as you go on later throughout the round. Sorry, I have an itch on my face. I don't know why my face is so itchy today. All right. Anyway, the fourth thing is to make the judge doubt opponent. Place doubt in the judge's mind. Expose weak areas. Again, ask questions. If you ask enough questions and you push hard enough with your questions and you're aggressive enough, then your opponent might start to crumble and not give good answers, and the judge will start to doubt in your opponent and think, is this really a good example, or does the opponent really know a lot about this example? Is he really knowledgeable on this, or does this example really support his side? So you can place doubt in the judge's mind, expose weak areas. And the fifth way, which is pretty awesome, make your opponent destroy their own side. You can have them destroy their own argument or contradict themselves. Get them to ask questions in such a way that you get them to contradict themselves. Cross-ex can be very elaborate. You can set a trap where you say, okay, I'm going to ask this, they're going to answer that, I'm going to ask these, and you bring them around in a circle until you get them to contradict themselves. So you lay all these traps with your questions, and you lead them down a rabbit hole almost. You get them to say the opposite of what they said in their case. That's very effective. It destroys their credibility, which really helps you. So that's kind of the purposes of cross-examination, which we'll be exploring more in the next couple videos. This is just an introduction. General rules before we move on. Be polite and respectful at all times. Even when you're cross-exing your opponent, be respectful. When you're being cross-exed, be respectful. When your opponent's going on and on and on and he won't let you talk, still be respectful. You can politely interrupt him, but be respectful. If he gives an answer that doesn't make much sense, don't still be polite and respectful while asking him to clarify. Just be nice and respectful. Be polite and respectful at all times. Don't say something that's rude in your cross-examination. All right, the other important thing, which a lot of people find really weird at first, and you may have noticed this in our practice round, the one I had with Lily, don't face your opponent during cross-ex. If you look at this picture here, which I'm putting up on the screen, you'll see that in cross-examination, we were not looking at each other. We were looking straight ahead. Why? I mean, we were asking questions of each other. Why not look each other in the face and make eye contact? Isn't that rude not to make eye contact? Actually, in LD, this is a little different. Again, as I've said over and over, LD is impersonal, meaning you're not having a beef with your opponent. You're not having a beef with the... you don't have a problem with, so if you're debating Bob, you don't have a problem with Bob. You're not personally against Bob or mad at Bob. You're just debating him because, he's your opponent. And so you don't want it to become personal where, we start to take these issues personal and we start to get offended. So if we look at each other in the eye as we're asking these questions and we're like, yes, I know, but isn't there a problem with your case? And isn't there a problem with this? And isn't there a problem with that? The other person starts to feel offended and it starts to become personal. Like, it just starts to become personal. If we're looking ahead at the judge, it reminds everyone, I don't have a problem with you. I just have a problem with your side because I'm supposed to have a problem with your side. We're in a debate round, and I just have a problem with your side, but I'm still going to be friends with you, Bob, at the end of the round. I have nothing against you. I'm just debating. So that's why we don't face each other. We look straight ahead at the judge. We look at the judge who's sitting there, and the reason we look at the judge is because both of us are asking questions, yes, of each other, but the purpose of cross-examination is to expose flaws and show the judge that something is wrong with your opponent's case. And so when you ask questions, you want to be looking at the judge, because really this whole cross-examination, even the whole round, is for him, because he's the one who's going to judge at the end and give you feedback and tell you who the winner is. So face the judge during cross-examination. And that pretty much covers the introduction of cross-examination. So in the next video, we're going to look at starting to ask questions, how to ask good cross-ex questions. Then we're going to look at how to answer cross-ex questions well. And then that'll be it for cross-examination section. This section is shorter than the rebuttal section, which was crazy long, and also shorter than the case section. We're just going to do a quick overview for beginners of cross-examination. So I'll see you in the next video.